All right, TV fans, she's been scheming her way through Westeros for a few seasons, and now she is making her way, wrecking havoc in 1938 Los Angeles. With me is Natalie Dormer. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby. Thank you so much for joining me, Natalie.
Absolute pleasure. Hi, Sam.
This role in your new series, Penny Dreadful City of Angels, it just seems like an absolute blast to play. You get to do, your character is Magda, the shape-shifting demon, who gets to jump into all these different personas, and they're wildly different people. So I'm just wondering, for you as an actor, do you have to sort of separate those out and compartmentalize those as different characters, or is there sort of like a Magda essence that you want threaded throughout?
That's a really good question. When I began the job, the jury was out, so to speak, as to which of that it would be. And John Logan, the writer-creator of the show, and I realized quite quickly that you had to have a purity of commitment when you were playing each of the iterations, as we called them. For a couple of reasons. You found that if there's a bit of a wink and a nod to the camera in as Magda embodying, you know, Alex or Elsa or Rio, that it kind of just undermined the scene. And it was important, you know, it would pull us out of it, the audience out, but it wouldn't be fair on my co-star, and also it just didn't work. Honest with you. So we realized the way to make these women the most fascinating and engaging, and the drama for each storyline to be the best it could, to have the most impact, was truly to commit wholeheartedly to them each as individual characters, which, you know, and yeah, as you say, there is the ostensible, obviously they talk different, they walk different, you know, all the sort of bells and whistles of that, but also in the psychology of them. That's what I realized quite quickly, is they did need clean, completely different characterizations. So yes, they're all Magda, but they're really not in the technique that is required to play them.
And the technique and bells and whistles, as you call it, is very impressive. Every single one of them has different physicality, different accents in each character. Were there any like of those accents that were new for you? Like, I don't know if I have seen you perform in a German accent before.
I had dabbled in a German accent a little bit in David Ives's play Venus, which I did last year, and I did the year previous in 2017 with David Oakes on the West End stage. There is people who know the play. I think Nina Arianda played it very well for you guys in New York. Anyone who knows the play will know that there is a bit of caricature German in that play. So I had a little bit of a warm up there, but obviously caricature was not what was required here. So yes, it's really interesting you say that, actually, Sam, because the voices is where I started with all of them. I got the job considerable number of months before shooting. And so John and I would send John voice messages, as we all have on our iPhone, and say, you know, what do you think of this for Alex? What do you think of this voice for Elsa? So accent and voice, and sort of like just playing around, sending like sound files. You know, John was very adamant that he wanted Magda, supernatural Magda, to be British. I don't know what that is about you Americans when you find a British accent. I just, you know, I'm not going to comment on that. But he was very clear that he wanted Magda, the umbrella character, so to speak, to be British. And then obviously Elsa was going to be German. I pitched some different sounds for Alex, and then and Rio happened, and we slowly, you know, voices, and then you get into movement, and that actually helps your placement. I mean, I have to say, this is the camera job that I have used my stage training for the most. I trained originally for stage, you know, more years ago than I can mention. No, joke. It's, 15 years ago, whatever it was. my stage training, going back to discipline of voice and finding placement of respiratory voice and physicality, like pushing the boundaries of what you think you're capable of, or without trying to make it caricature, trying to make it feel real. So that's a long-winded answer for you.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I recently talked to your co-star Daniel Zavato, and he was talking about how John Logan made it feel like a rehearsal process, like you were training for the theater, because John Logan has history.
Where he comes from. Yeah, I think that's where he comes from.
So what was it like? What conversations did you have with John? What was that process like working with him?
I mean, I flew to New York and we workshopped it. Where I think I was one of the first people cast, if not the first. And I mean, I know he had Nathan Lane in mind. I mean, who wouldn't have? But I don't know if that was solid at that point. So I went to New York, and I've been really struck by John's writing of the first few scripts that I had read. And so he and I spent a few hours in a rehearsal room, playing with the women. Let's spend half an hour with Alex now. Let's spend 25 minutes. And he noted me, and he was like, I like that. I don't like that. Or if we can't find that, don't worry about it. So yeah, it was I think, theatre roots and mine sort of recognized each other in that. That's a real gift, but it's also absolutely imperative if you're doing a job like this. I mean, there'd be no other way to do it. You really, the sort of man hours, of giving yourself hooks is what it's about, Sam, really. One character it might voice, with a character it might physicality. You find your hook, like all actors do. It's just on this occasion I was doing 4 at once, and give yourself your hook in. But when I got to pre-production in Los Angeles, obviously the makeup and hair department and the costume department helped me immeasurably well, because as we all know, clothes change the way you move. And there were some things that, John was very adamant about. He just saw that black dress, for Supernatural Mag. He wanted that look. She was very prevalent in his head in that regard. But the others, there was some more movement on. Rio, for instance, and really there was a lot of collaboration in some places. So it was a mixture, really.
Yeah. And a great dance scene with Rio, I would point out as well.
Yeah.
That seems like
so much fun. Yeah, lots of fun. Are you a dancer? Do you like to dance?
No, I have been a performer, and I pretended to dance, so not really a dancer.
No, I love that. And Jonathan, who plays Mateo, he's a dancer as well, training. And I was a dancer way back. I gave it up when I was a teenager, but my first professional job was as a dance chorus. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of nice to blow the cobwebs and blow the dust off. And I mean, I hope the audience just enjoy that scene, because we were supported by incredible dancers. I can't speak highly enough of the dancers, and the music and the dance moves of that time, that counter-revolution that was happening there in the 30s, is a really exciting, vivacious, moment. And the set piece in the episode is beautiful. So wasn't so happy about the singing, but we all have to do things. We all have to do things they like. So,
well, it's part of the fun, I think, too, especially for fans watching you dive into all these different characters and pulling training and skills from your background, is like you were part of Game of Thrones, Marjorie Tyrell. Tyrells are my favorite house, Game of Thrones, but that was a huge phenomenon, really, television phenomenon. So you kind of become associated with a certain look. Marjorie had a certain poise and a certain characterization that I think people can't help but associate with. So it's really fun to see you dive into these other things. Was that a conscious thing that you were looking for to
oh yeah,
million change?
100%, of course it was. And with some specifically, it's just so liberating to play a character like that, because there is no vanity in fact, you want the camera to be in the worst angle when you're playing a character like Alex, you know, because, and for once you're not worried about, you know, you're in that regard. You're just completely liberated to play this strategy fully, to push the boundaries physically of, I mean, what you want to say get away with. It's not accurate, because it's not that I'm trying to pull a fast one on the audience. Never want anything that doesn't feel believable to them or believable to Michael Gladys, who I'm playing opposite, or to myself. But you want to, and we all know this, we all have physical tics and habits, and actors definitely have a bag of tricks. They're having a bad day or a tired day that they rely on. And if you've been playing Marjorie Tyrell for 5 years, if you're having a bad, slow, tired day, you just, you know, you go into your bag of tricks, and you know, you pull out an Old Faithful, because you know it will get you by. And you know, I think actors have fun spotting that in other actors, and then that's when it does herald a concerted, you know, a performance that has really required hard work, with nowhere to hide, with no bags of tricks, but it's like diligent technique and craft day in, day out. And, you know, I knew it was going to be a physical challenge, as well as a mental one. And just, you know, for instance, when I do an accent, I would normally always stay in that accent. If I was doing an American movie, I would stay in an American accent for the duration of the shoot. But, you know, I couldn't do that on this. I was jumping. And so, you know, you find those muscles aching. And I just think it's really healthy to, I think it's really healthy to scare yourself a bit. And I did in these roles.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about the role as well that she did without the accent, this sort of main Magda role, because it kind of struck me like, it seems like it would be very easy for that part, as the umbrella part, to come off as sort of broad stroke, generally evil, and sort of cartoonish, but you don't present it that way. So what did you do to sort of like give her layers and more depth?
Well, I really saying that. Thank you, Sam, because I really did. The last thing I wanted to do is play a two-dimensional body. You know, it's John Logan stole the role to me. You know, as I mean, the word goddess was used as well, and as well. I think he was trying to sort of communicate exactly what you're saying, that she was more a deity or a supernatural being in sort of the kind of, say, like we would think of like the pantheon of like Greek or Roman or like Aztec gods, you know, with those stories where they have real personalities. It's not like the Judeo-Christian idea of this is God and this is the devil. You know, Magda and Santa Muerte seem to come from another kind of place. They seem to come from like maybe there's a catalogue of supernatural family back there, which would accurately lean into sort of some of the Aztec nuts, you know. And I pushed John on that. I was like, you know, she's sowing the seeds of disorder, chaos in a kind of Loki way, I suppose people would know from Norse mythology. And, you know, because her argument is mankind does it to herself. You know, there seems to be an argument embedded there that she's like, oh, I've tried with mankind and they're a bunch of assholes, you know? It's like, and like she's willing them and pushing them to prove different, because, you know, the audience will realize in my dialogue with Lorenza, with my dialogue with Santa Muerte, that, you know, there's some bad stuff's gone down between the sisters, and Matt obviously holding a lot of anger and pain and resentment towards that. And the way she's manifesting that pain and that anger is to tear and mess around with mankind. Now, why she's doing that exactly, you know, maybe we will see. But that was very important to me, because she seems to be a metaphor for mankind. You know, I think what John seems to be peddling in this, and it's up to the audience to decide, but he seems to be experimenting with this idea that, you know, good people do bad things. You know, they do it protecting their family. They do it out of a sense of pain or loss or disgust, or it's, you know, what pushes you. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It's like this argument of how horrible can mankind to each other, under the banner of something that they think is, and you know, and good and noble. And a lot of the actors have that theme in common throughout the show. So it would make no sense if Magda was just like the two-dimensional baddie on top of that. We have to give her, you know, we hopefully, you know, and John knows how I feel about this, you know, we have to give the color to her as well, else it undermines the story that you're telling about everybody else. Because she is fundamentally a metaphor, and that's the beauty of mixing genre like this. You know, it's like that supernatural element is so that you can sort of cut to the quick of the argument quicker. And I was aware of that. I was aware that, you know, supernatural Magda is the most metaphorical out of all the characters. That's not an easy thing to play. You're quite right. It's really not.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is, as you're talking about this, there's so much going on in this story because it's a period piece. There's the noir crime drama aspect, there's love stories, there's a supernatural aspect, and you sort of, as Magda, a shapeshifter, get to touch all of them in some way.
Yeah.
So what was it that first really resonated to you in the script that really grabbed you and made you excited to join on?
Yeah, as you say, I really got the golden ticket with being able to play with all the cast members. You know, it's such an amazing ensemble cast, and that I get to like completely, you know, dance literally, metaphorically with most of them is makes me the lucky one. In answer to your question, you know, the second reason, I undoubtedly the second reason, or maybe it was the first reason, whichever order it was, that I took the role. You know, it was like, oh, here's the technical gambit, here's the technical challenge of playing 4 people at once. But the other one was definitely the themes. I was very empathetic to the themes and the questions that John seemed to want to explore. And I think, you know, with the horror of what's going on in the world right now with COVID-19, you know, thankfully, every cloud, there seems to be a slight shift in socio-political feel insofar as we're realizing what unites us again, common humanity. We're seeing acts of great compassion and solidarity, like locally, nationally, and internationally. But, you know, when I took this job, you know, just over a year ago, you know, we were prime, you know, Brexit time here in London, in Europe, and we were, you know, America is going through its own pains, and this political polarization that seemed to have been happening in the last, you know, handful of years, I personally found absolutely terrifying. Demonization of other, pointing the finger, this resurgence in nationalism, and this like this gnarly identity politics. And you know, John makes the case that, you know, there's so much that 1938 has in common with, you know, it certainly did with 2019 when we shot this, started shooting it. So for me, I was intrigued by the statement that he was, I don't know, hoping to make, exploring. And if that be the antagonist to that story, well, then I was in, because I think for my own process, I was like, what has happened to the world in the last 10 years? Like I think a lot of people are, like, regardless of where your, you know, your value systems or your political allegiances lie, I think a lot of people have gone, you know, holy, you know. So, and it was a very turbulent time coming out in America, coming out of, you know, the Great Depression and just those interwar years. So it's just fertile for this stuff.
Yes. Well, it's a great series and a great part for you. So thank you, Natalie, for sitting down with me today and discussing Penny Dreadful. And everyone watching at home, make sure you subscribe to Gold Derby. Keep up to date with everything during any season. And thank you, Natalie.
Thanks, Sam. Stay safe, everyone. Take care.
Bye.